PhD, the majority of programs, but I'm not saying that all universities will provide this kind of funding, but a lot of universities in the US, when it comes to PhD, you are going to be automatically get a tuition waiver from the university. Not a lot of people actually know this yet. So that's why the way I see it, there are not a lot of people actually thinking about doing PhD in the US. And this is kind of like my mission here as an advisor to basically tell as many people as possible, PhD, go to the US. PhD, go to the US. Because of this funding scheme that they have, it's really beautiful, beautifully set up for us so that you don't have to actually, think about where do I get the funding from. Okay. To the point where when I had an advisee and they wanted the PhD, I don't even bother asking if they're going to apply for LPDP or Fulbright, because let's go just straight to the universities directly, because a lot of them actually going to provide the funding for you. Okay, so that's that for PhD. Again, I would love to know. I can't see the chat here because in front of me is basically the slide, but hopefully Santika is interacting with you, and some of you are basically saying that, hey, I want to do PhD. I would love to see that. Okay, the next thing after basically, okay, we got the English checked, and then we basically figure out the funding options. Basically with funding, again, like with LPDP, before I forgot, with the LPDP and Fulbright, the timeline, basically the easiest way to understand, or the easiest way to kind of like familiar yourself with, okay, so should I apply the university first or should I apply the scholarship first? Basically, the way I look at it, just follow whichever timeline that is the closest. So like right now it's in June. What will be the closest timeline that we have in front of us? Is it LPDP, or is it, probably the way I look at it, probably it's the deadline for the universities? Then let's go for that. All right. And then comes February 2022, that's when the deadline for Fulbright, right? And so start preparing for that. Okay. And then after we figure the funding plan, of course, the next part is to decide on the right program, although probably you guys already know exactly what program that you're going to do. However, I definitely still see that there are some of you probably who are, for example, let's take a look at it together, maybe still deciding between an MBA or data science, or maybe you have a background in engineering, and then you're still deciding, should I take MBA or should I take engineering management, right? Or maybe you're not sure what you want to pursue a master's degree for. Like maybe you are under pressure that you're probably currently working in an environment where a lot of your colleagues one by one applying for a master's degree, and then you kind of like, oh my God, I think I need to do the same. But then you don't really know exactly what you want to pursue a master's degree for, a PhD for. Or how about you're just not sure what you want to do or try to achieve for the next 3 to 5 years? That happens to some of us. If that's the case, then it is likely, I'm sorry to break this to you guys, it is likely that you are not ready to apply yet, because, okay, I'm going to sound very biased in a minute now, because I'm with EducationUSA. I want you guys to study in the US, obviously. If you want to study in the US, you have to be able to say no to all of these questions, but not necessarily if you want to study outside the US, because the way other countries outside the US are being kind of like, I don't know what's the right word, but the way they, look for applicants and the way their education system or the way they actually teach the course, it's not necessary that you have to know what you want to use that degree for. So realistically speaking, there are some of us who are, hey, I want to do master's just so that I can flash my degree to the company where I want to work. Then if that is you, I'm not saying that it's wrong, but I just don't really see how it works if you want to study in the US, if you choose the US as the country of destination, because applying to US is going to be time consuming, but then of course that's what we are here for, EducationUSA, but it's not going to be easy. But what I love about you guys, even though there are some of you, or maybe the majority of you whom I have not met, I'm pretty sure by you guys attending the session, you already know that you want to study in the US. And I'm pretty sure that you already know what you want to do. And why I can say that with a certainty, it is because I've been doing this for the past 6 years. And always, probably just like one or two people in a year, but I'm talking about like, the way I want to say it, probably there are only one or two people in a year where they don't really know exactly what they want to do, but the rest is we're talking about like hundreds. So I'm meeting hundreds of advisees in a year. You guys your guys are just on point. So like you guys know exactly what you want to do, why you're doing it, and what for you're doing this program. So, and then the next thing is start early. So I've been saying this since January of this year to actually, if you want to start your master's degree or PhD in 2022 term, you have to start now. Now is June, July is around the corner. I don't want to say that this is early. This is somewhat kind of like late, but we still do have time, obviously. But let's see. Basically, I usually tell people that we don't want to have 1 year early, but 2 years prior to the beginning of study. The reason is because, and I have a good reason, and hopefully that you guys are going to kind of like be, like shocked. The reason is because the university deadlines in the US, they range from 5 to 11 months before the program starts. So it's very, very early before the program starts. So for example, if the deadline is December of this year, so there are a lot of universities for the 2022 term that has deadlines in December. So December 1st, December 15th, those are the deadlines where a lot of universities set. And then January 15th, January 5th, February 5th. So it's always kind of like similar. So in the 5th, 15th, or 10th is the date for the deadlines. So if the deadline is December of this year for a program that will start in September next year, it would have been nice if you can actually start as early as this past January. But let's say this is your first time hearing this, and then you're kind of like in a panic mode right now. Oh my God, but this is the first time I'm hearing this, and then I have not started anything. Don't worry, but start now, okay? Like start now, because again, like July is around the corner. Some of us are thinking, oh, come on, like July, no, let's say that my deadline is December, July, August, September, October, November. Come on, I have like 5 months. That should be enough, right? Not all. It's for some people, it might be enough. But when it comes to essay, which I'm going to kind of like talk a little bit about it, you don't want to have 6 months because essay is actually really, really crucial. And I'm going to tell you why. Okay. So now you know that you need to start early. Okay. Give at least a year before the deadline. Okay. How about choosing schools? How many schools that we can apply? So technically, you can apply as many schools as possible in the US. It's different. I heard that, for example, like in the UK, there are some limit on how many universities that you can apply. It's not the case in the US. So at least now you know that you can apply as many schools as possible. However, we also want to be mindful about the fact that the application fee might kind of, really expensive. But normally, if you are applying to 3 to 4 or 3 to 5 schools, it's okay. It's good. It's kind of like the right number. But if you can go to 4 to 6, that's also very ideal. And normally, the way we want to pick the schools are usually, 1 to 2, what we call dream schools, and then 1 to 2 target schools, and then 1 to 2 safety schools. So I'm not going to kind of like, focus too much on this, because assuming that you guys are going to use LPDP, we can basically forget about this category of schools because we don't really have the luxury. Although now with LPDP, the list of schools are way more than what they had for the past, I think, what is it, 2 years, where the schools are actually just very few. I heard that right now they're, like open so many schools. But it's unfortunate. I think the way I look at it, I really wish that they allow us to pick four or even more schools. But what I heard from my advisees, you guys can only pick 3 schools, and that's not enough. That's actually really not enough. And so we can kind of like somewhat forget about like this category of schools like dream, target, safety, but in a way we can still do that in a way. Okay. So basically just a little bit. So dream schools are basically the schools where, so we're talking about like acceptance rate. So dream schools are schools where we call it highly selective universities. Those schools that are really, really, highly competitive to get into. And then target schools are schools who are basically have about 50% of acceptance rate. And then safety schools are basically schools that have 70% and up of acceptance rate. But when we talk about acceptance rate, it has to be specific on the program, not just like schools in general, but programs. Okay. And then you'll be surprised when you see there are schools that you may have never heard before, but they are actually number one or even like in the top 10 for that particular program. So how do you find out about this? You can try Googling it. So I love Google, so it's always there. Or look at the ranking. So I'm not a big fan of using ranking as kind of like, the way, like when you want to, like pick universities and then just rely on the ranking. But using ranking for that specific program is very necessary. Okay. For a PhD, you can also do the same. However, it's quite also common for a PhD candidate to actually start by contacting a number of professors, or maybe just one professor that you really look forward to working with together. Contact a number of professors or faculty members you would hope to work with and share your research proposal. So with PhD, okay, so with master's degree alone, the whole application system, especially the application process, especially if the program is actually, we're not talking about like hundreds of students, hundreds of applicants, is very personal, meaning that they are able to contact you directly and ask you specific questions. With PhD is one level up more personal, meaning that once you already have a back and forth conversation with one or particular faculty, professors or faculty members, and then you basically share with him or her about your research proposal, and they love your research proposal. I don't want to say that it's guaranteed 100% that you're going to get accepted, but it's kind of like a ticket for you to actually get accepted. All right. To the point where if the professors or the faculty members are already really, really into having you on board with them, and then let's say to get into the program, you still have to, submit GRE or what have you. If you ask the professor to kind of like, hey, is it possible for you to kind of like, let me not take the GRE? They are able to make that kind of exception, which is like, it's amazing. Okay. This is why I love having more PhD advisees with us. Okay. And then, of course, do research. So after this slide, I'm going to kind of like go very technical. So we're going to talk about GRE and GMAT, but at least, the first part of the session, I want you guys to kind of like, get a familiar on, the timeline, and then why English is very, very important. Now you know why. But you also need to do research, how each program is best for you. And the way I look at it is I usually tell people that we need to be selfish. Or maybe not that you need to be selfish. You have to be selfish when it comes to choosing the right program for you. Not the other way around. The other way around is usually by us trying to fit into the schools that we want. So let's say I want to get into the schools because, well, when I have the degree, I can flash it and it's going to look really cool. Maybe that's the case, but then you're trying so hard to actually fit into the program. We don't want that. We want to be the other way around, where you actually want to be very selfish. Ask yourself how this program from this particular universities going to, let me do whatever it is that I want to do when I'm done, when I want to implement this back in my home country. So you have to be very selfish. Okay. Common question, which I get this a lot, and when you do an advising session one-on-one with Santika or myself, you will realize that GPA, like I rarely say the word GPA as in like asking like what is your GPA. The reason is because, okay, but let's kind of like the common question first. Can I get into grad schools despite a low GPA that is 3.0, 3.4? First of all, guys, the 3.0 GPA is actually not low. I'm just saying, throw it out there. 3.1 and above, in fact, you can actually put that GPA number in your resume. And then we're going to talk about that. Or try to watch our last session on resume or CV. But it's actually not low. In fact, like I said just now, you can actually put it in your resume even if you have like 3.1 GPA. But to answer this question is, well, yes and no. The reason I never mention about GPA or even like ask you about GPA is because what is the point of me asking that question, right? Assuming that you come to me, you already graduated, what is the point of me asking your GPA? There's nothing we can do about it. There's nothing that we can't control the fact that you already graduated with 3.0, 3.1 GPA, right? So focus on other requirements instead, which a lot, like resume, we can work on letters of recommendation, we can work on essay and what have you. Focus on other requirements you have control over now, as you can do nothing with your college GPA. And another is because why I said yes or no is because universities in the US, a lot of them actually evaluate the applicants holistically. So the keyword here is holistic. And this is something that I couldn't find anywhere else outside the US, and I love it. I love about it because the keyword here is holistic. It means that they're not just going to take a look at your GPA per se, but they're going to take a look at all of the requirements that they ask. Like in the beginning, remember the first slide that I showed you, the resume, the transcript, the TOEFL, the GRE or GMAT, the essay, resume. They're going to take a look at all of those. Okay, and this is very different than if you want to study elsewhere. Because elsewhere, like literally elsewhere, outside the US, even maybe in Indonesia, we are very grade centric. We are very academic centric, meaning that the university is basically the first thing that they are looking at is basically what is your GPA. So it's like a complete opposite on, when you want to study in the US, I rarely ask about GPA. And so, write an excellent essay, resume or CV, and get strong letters of recommendation and GRE or GMAT scores. Basically, again, those are the things that we still have control over, right? We still have control over on writing an excellent essay. We still have control over writing strong resume or CV and on all of this. So the answer is yes and no. Okay. How about letters of recommendation? I'm going to skip some of the slides here because we happen to have, okay, let me see. We have this tomorrow. So I want you, because I want to kind of like have enough Q&A session, and hopefully there are some questions going on here in chat. I see the sign here keep popping up that the chat is happening, although I can't really read it at the moment. But I prefer to just let's kind of like focus on letters of recommendation tomorrow because we have a separate session on that. Okay. Ooh, the fun stuff. Preparing for a GRE or GMAT task. This is for you guys if the programs that you want to go to, obviously asking for one of this. But of course, not all of the programs will ask for a GRE or GMAT. Especially since the pandemic. I don't know about now, guys. I don't know if you guys already see the university websites for the 2022 term. I'm guessing there are still universities that waive the GRE or GMAT. But last year, guys, oh my goodness, a lot of universities actually waive the GRE or GMAT because of the pandemic. And I see that as an opportunity, of course. So that was a time when I actually tell a lot of people, apply now, especially if you just don't feel like taking GRE or GMAT or just don't feel like do the preparation for the GRE or GMAT. And that's okay if you are saying that to yourself. In fact, I think there are a lot of people that do not want to study in the US because of this specific reason, because of this GRE and GMAT. But I want to kind of like able to tell you tonight that you don't have to be scared about GRE and GMAT. People who are scared of this test is because we are, again, like I said earlier, it's kind of like part of our culture. And I think this is like other countries as well, where we are very, we pay attention only on score, like, like your GPA. And then again, like with this GRE or GMAT score, as if it's the only thing that the university is looking for. But hopefully by now you're not thinking that way, because remember the keyword, it's holistic. That yes, they are asking for GRE or GMAT for a reason, obviously, but then it doesn't mean that that's the only kind of factor for you to get in, right? Because then if that's the case, then what's the point of them asking you to write an essay? What is the point of them asking you to have a strong resume or CV and other requirements, okay? So the common questions here. So let's now kind of like go into this territory of like the fun stuff, or maybe not fun stuff. I'm just being very cynical there. Of GRE and GMAT. How long? So the common questions that I got a lot is, how long should I prepare before the test? Is it, I don't know, like 3 months, 6 months, 1 year? How do I prepare? Buy the book, or should I join a prep course? And of course, the 1 billion question is, what is a good GRE or GMAT score? Because I can't seem to find the score on their website. And this is another reason why I said holistic, and I think I'm going to say holistic over and over tonight, is because that's a good example on why they don't actually use the exact score, but they are usually put what they call a cutoff. So usually they look at it from previous admission cycle. And then they kind of like put an average out of, so for that particular admission cycle, what is the average score of GRE or GMAT that of the applicants that actually get accepted? Okay. Oops. So how long should I prepare before the test? Is actually really depends on where you are with your, obviously, English, but specifically I want to pay attention more on your math, because remember in the beginning that English is very important. Your English proficiency is really important. When it comes to your GMAT, the verbal section is kind of like on a whole other level. So the English part is actually so challenging, to the point where if we as Indonesians, we will find it very, very challenging to get a somewhat high score in the English or the verbal section. But the good thing is we are good in math, or hopefully you are good in math. But I think the majority of us as an Asian, we are, our math level is somewhat kind of like higher than the West part of the world. So use that part to actually kind of like balance the score. So how long should I prepare before the test? It really depends. But for some of my advisees, it's rather quick, especially on the math side. But yeah, people found it really challenging on the verbal section. But I would say there are some of my advisors that able to prepare like very intense 3 months preparation. But it can also definitely go all the way to like 6 months to 1 year. And how to prepare, again, it also depends. Are you the kind of person where you are just feel comfortable in learning on your own by the book? Or there are some people who they can perform better or understand better when they are actually being in a classroom. So it really depends. Or maybe now, just via online. Okay. Some graduate schools may not. Okay, let's talk a little bit about score here. And I have like some slides that I found it really interesting. Some graduate schools may not specify minimum or average GRE GMAT score requirements. In fact, I think it's just nowhere on their website. This means you will have to set your target scores based on your own research. So it depends again on the program that you want to go to. So if you are going to study computer science, for example, or data science, or like very science heavy, then obviously the university will take a look at your quantitative section or the math section over the verbal or the English section. But let's say you want to study, I don't know, education, for example, where there is no math involved, there is no there's no math involved. Of course, they are going to pay attention more on your verbal rather than the quantitative. Okay, or if you want to study LLM, that's why with LLM your English TOEFL score is actually quite high. So we're talking about like 110 and above. I know it's rather crazy, but it is what it is when it comes to law. But wait, I take it back. I forgot. With law, there is no GRE. Good news. I forgot to mention that in the beginning as well. If you want to study law, basically there's no GRE. But yeah, with law, what we want to pay attention on is basically the English part. That's why you have to have like a really high. But even if they are asking for a GRE, which okay, that's not the case. But then if they ask for a GRE, the way I look at it, they will definitely take a look at your verbal section. Okay. Or if you want to study public policy, for example, there are some universities that they are still asking for GRE. And then, they are going to pay attention more on your verbal or English section rather than the math. Okay. But I know that probably, oh man, okay, so I'm not gonna get the minimum score that I should aim, but I'm giving it to you guys. All right. So this is basically based on my experience. Working with so many advisees in the past, and this are basically what I can come up with. If you can aim for, let's see, for the GRE Quant, which is the math, it's going to be quite high. It's going to be 165 above out of 170. I know it's rather like, what, 165? The reason is because this is especially if you want to apply to a highly selective universities, aka the dream schools that I mentioned earlier, then we probably want to pay attention a little bit more on the GRE or GMAT. But then remember, the keyword here is holistic. It doesn't mean that if you end up with 160, you don't want to apply to that university anymore because I said 165. Don't do that. This is just kind of like so that you can aim rather high. But 165 out of 170 on the GRE Quant. Why is it high? Because normally it's very rare for me to actually have my advisees or Indonesians who can achieve 155 and above on the GRE verbal. That's how challenging the GRE verbal is. Okay, normally people get 145. That alone they're already struggling. But try your best not to get 140. But 150 above. But ideal. So if you have 150 on your GRE verbal, it's still okay. But if you can aim for 155, that's even better. And I'm not kidding. For the past 6 years, I've been working with EducationUSA and working with a lot of advisees. I can say that there are only about less than 5 people, or maybe maximum of 5 people, that can actually get 155 on the GRE verbal. I'm not kidding you. It is that hard. Have I taken the test? No. So I don't know what makes it hard, but it is hard. That's what I heard from a lot of my advisees. And then try to aim for 4 on the GRE essay, but normally my advisees get 3. So then it's something that depends on the program. On the GMAT, why I'm so very heavy on talking about GRE, because GMAT is very exclusive if you want to study MBA. But then now more and more MBA programs actually also allow you to take GRE. So I'm not like focusing too much on GMAT because, it's very exclusive to MBA program. But for GMAT, if you want to apply to highly selective MBA programs, definitely aim for 700 actually. But I'm just kind of like being a little bit nice by putting like 650 because there are still some possibility of you guys to still get accepted to an MBA program with 650, but we have to really pay attention so much more on the essay, have a really strong letters of recommendation, really strong resume, and stuff. Okay. So the GRE requirements for different programs, schools vary widely. I'm going to go really quick here. So for example, like I want to use the example of just one school, Harvard, but then this is really interesting because under the umbrella of Harvard universities, different programs actually have different cutoff of the GRE. So, for example, like Harvard Graduate School of Engineering, it makes sense that their average GRE quant scores is within the 90 or 95th percentiles, and I'm guessing, it's about the score that I just shared with you, but then lower on the verbal. Why? Because it's engineering. You have a lot of math to do, so then they kind of like go easy a little bit on the English part, right? But then take a look at the Harvard Graduate School of Design. Okay, this is like all the way back to like 2014. But look at how they actually kind of like put equal on the GRE quant and the GRE verbal, but it's kind of like rather on the low side. What does that mean? So I think the way I look at it, they don't really pay attention so much on the GRE. Probably they are going to take a look more on your portfolio. It's a school of design. Portfolio matters a lot, right? And then take a look at Graduate School of Education. It's different. But take a look at how they actually have low GRE quant scores. That is only 63 percentile compared to the School of Engineering that is in the 90th percentiles. But they require you to have actually a strong GRE verbal scores that is in the 81 percentile. Okay. So I think find it really interesting. But again, you don't have to kind of like really worry about GRE as in, oh my God, like I need to work on this and get like perfect scores. But really look at what programs that you're going to do. Okay. When a graduate school looks at your application, they are looking at a wide variety of factors. This is just kind of like, on top of what I just said to you verbally. They're looking at a wide variety of factors that tell them whether or not you may be a successful student in their program. And the GRE scores that you submit are merely one of these factors. Again, the keyword here is holistic, guys, okay? So this cutoff scores do not answer the question, what is a good GRE scores? But they will let you know the lowest possible score that the program will accept, okay? So some graduate programs have total cutoff scores, some don't, and only interested in the verbal or the quant. So the example that I have on the, with the Harvard is being the example. But most programs look at GRE scores as only one element of your application package, really, because again, the keyword here is, like I said earlier, it's holistic. Okay. But wait, having an excellent GRE or GMAT score is no guarantee that you will be admitted to a particular program. I'm sorry, but it is true. This is like a perfect way for me to keep reminding you that it's not a guarantee. And in fact, I actually have one advisee, I think it's about like 2 years ago. He had a full score on the GRE quant because he wants to do, I think, is it computer science or data science or something, you kind of like in that field. Full score, GRE quant, amazing. He didn't get accepted for that particular year. And I think he's trying again this year. So, it's not a guarantee. So other documents definitely plays a huge role as well here. Okay. The keyword here again, holistic. I don't know how many times I mentioned holistic here. And then, okay, this is another. So we're pretty much like done in terms of like the scoring system in GRE or GMAT. If you just kind of like want to have some questions about it, let me know. So I think I want to ask Santika if I'm doing well on the timing here. Can I go kind of continue, or should I stop at 8? Because again, I really do want to interact with you guys and have more Q&A session. So yeah, Santika, please do let me know. But in the meantime, yes.
Sorry to cut you. So yeah, to answer you, we have quite plenty of questions. So I will let you decide whether you want to finish off your PPT.
Okay.
It's like around 5 great questions that's kind of like open-ended that we can talk about all night long. So yeah.
Okay.
I'll let you.
So I kind of like actually forgot where I am on my slides and how many slides left that I have. I'm so bad at this, but I'm going to try to finish quickly here. But let's see, another common question that we got a lot is, so should I focus on GRE or GMAT first, or should I take TOEFL or IELTS first? Well, you can do either one, but the way I look at it, I mean, there are some people's, like some, some of my advisors that I invited in the past for America's events, and their answers are basically varied from one person to another. There are some people who said, "Oh, I took TOEFL first, and then I took the GRE," or some of them said, "Oh, I focused on the GRE first or the GMAT first, and then I did the TOEFL." The way I look at it, it really depends. Technically, or obviously, if you can achieve a good GRE or GMAT score, because remember when I said that the verbal section or the English section for the GRE or GMAT is kind of like a whole other level of English. It's like way beyond just the TOEFL that we know. If you can achieve a good GRE or GMAT score specifically in the verbal section, then obviously you should have no problem reaching the minimum scores of TOEFL or IELTS. If you want to do the other way around, so for example, this is good for you guys who are already feel confident in your English. Like, I have good English. I know how to write. I know how to read, listening and writing and what have you. Then yeah, probably you can kind of like just go ahead and focus on the GRE and GMAT, knowing that you won't have problem in reaching 90 or 100 or 110 on your TOEFL, or 7.5 or 8 for your IELTS. But if you're kind of like, I don't want to say that I have perfect English, that you think that you need to kind of like work on your English first, then obviously we want to kind of like focus on TOEFL or IELTS first, because the TOEFL and IELTS, remember how I said holistic, and then, there is no, like specific score for GRE or GMAT. We can't really do that for TOEFL and IELTS. So only for TOEFL and IELTS, where if the university asks for a particular score, which they always do that, have particular score, then that will be the scores that we have to get to. If they ask for 110 and then you submit 100, it's most likely that they are not going to move forward with your application. Okay, so it's really important to pay attention on the TOEFL. That's why I have that on my first slide, right? That the English proficiency is really important. Okay. Writing essays. I'm not going to talk about this, although I really do want to, but this is my favorite topic, as you may already know. I already have a separate session on that. I think I'm going to skip a lot of this, similar to the letters of recommendation. Trust me, you're not going to miss anything by me skipping this. Probably you'll be like, oh, wait, no, I want to hear about it. Don't worry, guys, because that is another story and shall be told another time. I love this quote. And good news is that we're going to have another session on writing a statement of purpose. We have this basically every single month. So I just had it like last week. And then I'm going to give another presentation specifically on statement of purpose and essay July 15th. Okay. So if you have not attended that one, I think you're going to learn so much. But what I want to tell you right now is that we do not want to underestimate the essay. In fact, probably essay is the first thing that you want to focus on before we move on to other application documents. Okay. Another common question, let's move on to another thing, is that I heard that we have to contact professors first. So do I need to contact any professor or professors, right? Yes and no. But what I want to tell you is that probably some of you don't know, but the US grad schools or departments, master's degree, PhD, they are very decentralized. It means that, so for example, like using the example of Harvard, right? So we're using the umbrella of or the name of Harvard universities. But depending if are you applying to Harvard Engineering School, are you applying Harvard School of Design, or are you applying to Harvard School of Business? Each of that program or each of that departments, they have their own regulations. They have their own things, basically. That's how decentralized they are. It's not the government of the US government actually kind of, like have their own rules, but they are very decentralized. So that being said, for most of the master's degree programs, technically you don't have to, but it's highly recommended to contact and make a connection with the professors, because remember, if you still remember what I said earlier, that master's degree or PhD in the US, they can actually see your application as very personal, right? And having this kind of, I don't want to call it relationship, but this kind of interaction, be it via email or maybe you have met the professors before for whatever reason, it's always a good thing if you can have that. Okay, especially if you can, and when you know this particular professor, or maybe you don't know, that's fine as well. But mentioning them, or even like to the point where you said that you're very so much you're very much inspired by him or her, and tell that in the essay. And again, this is something that I'm going to talk about like during my essay session, is always ideal. Okay, you can also make a connection with the admissions committee to help you with some kind of like a technical, and then to make them remember you, so that it's kind of like show them how serious you are, but then not asking them questions that are very general, but ask them questions that you couldn't find anywhere else in the on the website, for example. Make them remember you, so that by the time they really take a look at your application, when you submit everything, they kind of like, oh, I remember this person. Okay, so make them know you even before you submit your application. The benefits of making yourself known to the committee, I think I'm almost done here, is that, again, some grad schools, this is basically just what I said a few seconds ago, some grad schools would like to know their candidates on a personal level, especially PhD. Almost for PhD, they are going to definitely want to get to know the candidates on a personal level. On master's degree level, it depends on how small the program is. There are programs in the US where particular program where they only accept no more than 20 people each year. That's considered small. But then if you're talking about programs like MBA usually is rather large, then you don't really have to pay, you don't really have to worry about like having some kind of a connection, because then they won't really like care anyway. But yeah, those case, then they really do want to know you on a personal level. That being said, when you are able to actually have that kind of like connection with the admissions committee or the professors, they may make a lot of exemptions. For example, waiving application fee for you. You have no idea how many of my advisors actually able to do that. So they have been interact with the admissions committee to the point where they are ready to submit their application, and they just email them and then just ask, hey, thank you for answering all my questions. I'm ready to submit my application. Is it possible for me to actually get a waiver on the application fee? And then they can just give it like that, just like that. Yeah, sure. So that will happen. Sometimes, not like all, but a lot of my advisors actually do that, and they successfully, get the waiver. And of course, they may consider you for a graduate research or teaching assistantship position. Also, if you ask, or also if that's kind of like the route that you want to go to. So if you know that, what, I'm not going to apply for LPDP, I'm not going to apply for Fulbright for whatever reason, you are aiming for the graduate research or teaching assistantship position, then you definitely want to kind of like have that communication. Okay. So yes, I'm pretty sure we're almost done here. So things to know: the individual Department of Graduate Study decides your admission. So this is also the kind of questions where I have during my essay session, who is going to read my essay? Right? So basically, the admissions committee will read your essay, and then they are going to be that individual department. And who are the admissions committee? So if you're applying for MBA, for example, the School of Business, so then the admissions committee who are specifically work for that particular department. And then the other department, they also have their own admissions committee. So these are a bunch of experts on that field. Okay, so the individual Department of Graduate Study decides your admissions. For a master's degree, if your program is research heavy, especially if you are aiming for having a research assistantship or teaching assistantship, then it is highly recommended to contact and make a connection with either the faculty members or admissions committee. The whole point is to make them remember you, because that's kind of like also another ticket for you to get accepted. But even if the program is not research heavy, it's still highly recommended to contact them, but probably not if you're talking about, like there are some public policy programs where they accept like 200 students. Forget about it. Like MBA also. But if you're talking about like, I don't know, like 50, 70, I mean, nothing to lose if you kind of like, say hi to the professor. For a PhD study, it's quite different, because it's almost ideal if we actually even like start making that connection in the first place. So for PhD, it's not so much about thinking about the university, but rather who is going to be the person whom you're going to work with, and then look at which universities that particular person is actually at, in what university. So it's not like in the university first or the program first and then find the professor, but it's kind of like the other way around. It's finding the professor first and then look at what universities this professor is actually working at. But it's not all. There are some PhD programs where it's just kind of like similar to master's degree. So you have to apply first and then you look for professors. Okay. But before contacting them, of course, again, like you don't want to just basically ask like general questions. You have to have some kind of, questions ready. Find a reason for them to answer your email. And actually, if you want Santika or myself to actually take a look at the email draft before you're sending it to the professors, the admissions committee, we can actually do that. And I've been doing that for a couple of times. Contact the professor and show how you admire and are inspired by their work. So start with that, but then give them a reason to reply your email because they receive a lot of emails already. So if you just say that, hey, I admire you and I'm very inspired, and then for them, like, okay, what do you want me to say? Right. But then if you give them a reason, either you ask questions and really good questions, then they may actually want to reply to you. But don't take it personally if they don't get back to you. It's very normal. They are busy people. So it's very normal that they can either just not reply at all or just reply with, just probably just like 1-2 words, like good luck or whatever, right? But in some cases, the professor may get back to you. And I see that a lot from my advisees. And I have to push my advisees to that point in contacting them because these are kind of like new information for them because it's not common for us to contact the professors, especially in the US. But always good news, like not always, but the majority of my advisors always come back to me and share the good news where they replied and they show interest in your stories, and then they give you, like a good luck and what have you. But that's like what we actually want to happen. Okay. So some of the key takeaways from this event tonight. Let's see. So start early. Definitely start early. Ideally, begin 2 years before the program starts because the deadline is very early. Can go from 5 months to 11 months before the program starts. And of course, we don't want to just start submitting everything close to the deadline. So from that deadline alone, we want to kind of like have probably about like 6 months to 1 year before to prepare everything. Okay. English proficiency is definitely important, especially when studying in the US. Aim for not 79, but aim for 90. I'm not saying that they are not, like I said earlier, I just want to repeat it again here. I'm not saying that there are no universities that require their English on 79. There are, but the majority of my advisees, and I'm hoping the majority of you, are actually aiming for highly selective programs. I think it's also because it's LPDP or something like that. That being said, the majority of my advices are basically focused on 90, 90, 95, 100, 110. Okay. If the school requires a GMAT task, if the school requires a GRE task, I give you kind of like my cheat sheet. Basically, aim for a high score on the quant section, 165 and above out of 170. If the scores require a GMAT task, aim for 650. And you have tried your best on the GRE or GMAT test, but your scores are still below the cutoff score requirements. Move on. Don't stop applying to that particular university. I see this a lot from my advisors, and I hate seeing that. But move on. Let's just submit everything with that low score of GRE or whatever, because we never know. Maybe you have a really strong essay. We never know. And then they love your essay so much that they forget about the GRE GMAT. Let's focus on the other applicants' requirements, okay? Like essay, something that we can help you with. Resume and CV, we can take a look at that. Letters of recommendation, we will give you some tips, and we have the event on that tomorrow. Build the strongest overall application possible. I know this sounds like cliche, but this is kind of like the last words that I would like for you to kind of like understand when it comes to applying to US. The key word here is holistic. It means that all of the requirement, the documents are very important. so that we want to pay attention on each of those. Okay, I think that's my last slide. Basically, if this is your first time, I want you to think of us as kind of like the go-to place when you need some kind of assistance, or maybe you just need some I don't know, for us to like really push you for the better so that you're or make you feel less alone in this whole application process. We are here for you. Again, there are two advisors. Again, my name is Vina, if this is your first time. And I have my colleague Santika. They are two advisors in Education USA at America, and we are here for you. So I'm going to stop share. I think we have about 20 minutes to do the Q&A. Oh my God, I'm so proud of myself. Well, I mean, I want
Yeah.
to slide 8 actually, so I'm kind of like 10 minutes behind. But how are we doing, Santika?
We are doing really great here in the chat box. And actually, tonight, which is quite unique, we got the most questions so far from YouTube, which is very rare.
Oh,
This is like the first time ever. And because we apologize for the technical issues on YouTube, and one of the participants actually come here to Zoom to ask the questions. So thank you for doing that. And I know this participant isn't watching from Indonesia. I think she was from another country
cool.
near Indonesia. So, okay, Tina, we have a few interesting questions that I think will be great if we can go into more in depth. Of course, your PPT was very, very good. Like you give so much in depth information that if you are planning to apply for master or PhD, you already know where to start. Okay. But we have a very interesting question to kind of like follow up on your a few last slides of yours from Sanoj in Zoom. So I, kind of combined the follow-up information that I asked him and his questions. He's applying for a PhD in industrial or mechanical engineering for fall 2022. So what is the best way to reach out to the advisor or the professor in the US university before you actually apply? And what to convey in the message? Because in, your slides, you said, try to make connection. And we recommend them to actually email the professor, right? But he also follow up with another question on like, should I like send my cover letter to the professor? Is that necessary? So what I tell him in the chat box in Zoom was that you don't have to attach anything in your first email ever to the professors because I think we want to make the connection first before anything and testing whether he or she is interested with our profile or our background or our experience before we give them anything, very specific like cover letter or resume or even research proposal. So that's from my experience with my PhD advices as well. And Fina, also you can add
I
from your
definitely
perspective.
Yeah, I definitely want to add more to that. I'm just
Yeah.
kind of like concerned from the beginning of the session that because the session tonight is about master's degree and PhD, I really do kind of like want to focus on both equally, but I feel like I have so much more on PhD to the point where during my presentation tonight, I'm just kind of like think about, you know what, I think I'm gonna want to have a separate session on this. Let me know what you think, guys. If you want me to have a separate session on just specific on PhD, I will be happy to do it for you guys. But to your question, Sanuj, this is actually a really good question. So, what is the best way to reach out to the advisor? So first of all, you need to think about when it comes to PhD, it's not just like, okay, so I want this university. So this is the university that I want. And then I'm looking at list of faculty members or the professors, right? And then you're trying to fit in to what research that they are doing. We don't want that. If you've been with if you attend the session from the beginning, remember when I said, I think it's one of my slides where I think when I said we want to be very selfish. If for master's degree you have to be selfish, for PhD the selfishness is a whole other level. Like you completely want to be completely like 100% selfish. Selfish in a way that what you want to do is actually really linear to what that particular faculty members is actually doing. Because remember, guys, when I think I should have mentioned this in the beginning, when we want to do PhD, we're talking about you doing it for a minimum of 4 years, all the way to like 5, 6, 7 years. So this is not something that, oh, okay, I have my master's degree, I want to do PhD now just because, right? So we don't want to do that. So that being said, we want to focus on whatever research proposal that you have, not so much on cover letter. I think, and I agree with Santika not to kind of like just submit. It's because it's not like we're applying for a job. Although, yeah, although it's kind of like applying for a job in a way. That's why they are able to kind of like pay you instead of you paying their tuition.
Exactly.
But once you have the research proposal, then the next thing that you want to do is hunting for the right person, the right faculty members. So sometimes people can do Google, right? Or maybe you already have someone that you really inspire so much. Try to track that person. Where did this person get the degree from, or maybe from what universities? Really try to track that person, or maybe to the point you can actually just ask them by emailing them. And then so focus on that particular faculty members whom you believe, after you take a look at their CV or what have you, which they always do put their CVs on the university website, and then you feel like, oh, the research that this faculty member is currently doing is kind of like linear to what I want to do. And I think if I present this, what I want to do in my research proposal to this person, I think this person is going to find interest in my proposal. That's the kind of faculty members that we want to go to. And then from there on, the communication will go flawless, I would say. But then again, not all professors are going to answer your email. In fact, there are some programs where they clearly state on the website, do not contact the professor. In that case, then we kind of like, it's another story. But I hope I answer your question. So what to convey the message is basically just kind of like in the beginning, just introduce yourself. Okay, I think I should mention this, and I think this is why I have to have a separate session. When you email them, don't write too long, and that's something that I see that from a lot of people. Don't write it too long. Make it very brief, but don't give them. Yeah, I totally agree with something. Don't give them like a lot of things to read. Just kind of like just say hi first. Try to kind of like check the water here a little bit. If the professor is going to reply to you or not. Okay. Hopefully, I am.
Thank you so much, Fina, for adding to that. And my another tips for you PhD applicants, since you guys are trying to reach out to professors, and like what Fina said, sometimes Professor A or B will be too busy to actually answer your email. And now you're in the dark, like, should I apply to this program or not? Because the professor obviously didn't answer you. So what I usually suggest my PhD advisees, is looking for the same PhD program, even though they have different name, PhD and this and that. But if you look at the details of the research or the courses that you find, oh, this is what I want to do as well. I have so much interest in this area as well. Then you may probably also contact the professor in other universities for the PhD program, for that PhD program as well. So don't only just reach out to just one professor in one university, but do more like maybe 4 at least to broaden your I don't know, like options or opportunity. Like I would say, like, we always tell our advisees to apply more than one university, right? So for PhD, this is also applicable. Try to contact more than one professors, so that you have higher chance to hear back from at least one of them, if that makes sense. Okay. So yeah, I hope that helps. And if you need more guidance on that, we will be happy to do the one-on-one advising. And fun fact, when we started, we only have like what, Fina, 41 participants here. And now we have we have almost 55 right now. So I'm going to repeat the Zoom advising room again here in the Zoom chat box, and our email and everything. Okay. And move to the next question first so that Fina can answer this. Still on PhD, I just want to, get done with the PhD and move to the online versus in-person class. This is from Tian Mai. It's, so if the US universities offer kind of free PhD, or like, the full tuition waiver and the stipend for the PhD, I think this is for like the teaching or research assistantship, what can they profit or like gain from it? Because it's practically they give us something for free, right? So yeah, what do you think,
That
Fina?
is that is a really good question. I didn't expect that. The way I look at it is because what you're going to put on the table is going to be very valuable for them, and I think it's always come back to the word holistic. For them, it is definitely a pride if they know that they are going to have such applicant or such students graduated from their universities, knowing that these persons are going to do something big. And this is what comes to what essay actually, and this is why essays actually plays a really really huge role here, right? By telling them in advance that this is what I want to do. That's why they call it statement of purpose. See, now I'm talking about essay. Let's just wait until next month, right? So yeah, that's a really good question. And the reasons why they are able to do or to actually waive your tuition. And this is the case when, remember when I said that this is only usually only happens when the program is actually really small and it's a research heavy programs, is because the smaller the programs, the more funding that they receive from outside. So for example, I graduated from University of Maryland, that is very near from Washington DC. They actually have a lot of funding coming into that location wise. The reason why I'm saying this is because of location, right? Because University of Maryland is such a big public research university. A lot of government agencies that is only 20 minutes away from the campus pour a lot of funding into the universities to conduct a lot of research. But of course, not only just the University of Maryland, there are a lot of other universities out there that receive funding from outside to basically, do a particular research. All right. So that's, yeah, so that's that. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's the way I look at it. Why they are really able to have this, like teaching assistantship or research assistantship. So
All right. Thank you so much, Fina, for that. And moving to very interesting question. I think we didn't, really talk about it tonight, but I think this is also questions that a lot of people have in mind. So between online classes and traditional classroom, which is like in person, which one do you think it will be the priority for the US university? And during this pandemic, can we still study in person or everything's online now?
mm. I'm afraid that I'm not because I'm afraid that I won't be able to answer this to kind of like generalize the whole universities in the US, because this kind of questions are definitely the kind of the questions that you'd want to ask directly to universities. Because remember when I said, and this is all connected to my presentation tonight actually, because remember when I said that how universities in the US, they are very decentralized, because from one department to another department, even in the same universities, they may actually have their own regulation. They, for this particular program, in one universities may actually require the students to actually do the in-person class, and then others, the opposite. They don't, have they don't have in-person class whatsoever, but so everything is online. But then there are some programs where it's both, it's hybrid, right? Hopefully that's the kind of questions that it's related to the pandemic, right?
Yes.
During the pandemic, can we still study in the classroom or everything is online? Yeah. So Haria, this is the kind of questions that we definitely want to check with the departments.
All right. And I just want to, add a bit of things because, things are quite dynamic these days. They could change, right? So when you are looking at the current situation and then the later on, it could be different. So what you want to do, Haria, is, stay updated. You can keep in touch with the admission office to, just check whether or not they have, the learning modes that you are looking for, whether it's in person or hybrid or online. Depending on your concern, you can just communicate with them and let them know. They are very, very open and helpful. I have never find any advices of mine that I tell them to try to contact the admission office and they didn't get their answers at all. So that's very rare. So what you're gonna do is try to reach out to them and address your concern, regardless of whatever it is. Okay.
So
And okay,
I basically kind of like just skimmed through the questions that we have here, and
right,
it said that you already answered it in chat. But I love all these questions. Um,
exactly.
and so basically just get an additional 5 minutes from the team, which I really appreciate so much. Thank you, Ed America. So I think if I may, Santika, can we kind of like do real quick and just if we have the time, basically I will try to kind of like answer briefly, but I really do want to kind of like, touch upon these questions.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
Choose
So
which one you want to do.
Okay, so let's just start with what I'm currently looking at here from Betari Octavia. Sounds very familiar. Thank you so much for watching again, Betari. Do universities in the US put more consideration into TOEFL rather than IELTS, even if we pass their minimum score for both? Good question. I'm pretty sure the answer will be the same with what Santika had. But in the US, 100% they are going to accept TOEFL because obviously TOEFL is an American English. In fact, not all universities actually accept IELTS. And then nowadays there are some additional, other standardized tests like PTE and then Duolingo. But TOEFL is definitely 100% going to be accepted in the US. So if you know that you are only want to study in the US and you're not planning on studying anywhere else, then I would say that go to TOEFL unless the universities that you want to go to in the US also accept IELTS, because I feel like it's a very, very, very unnecessary to take both tests because why would you want to do that? Like it's not unnecessary. It costs a lot. Okay. Let's see. I have a question. It's from my father, sure. But if US universities offer free PhD courses, so what? Oh, okay. So we answered that. Sorry about that. And between IELTS and GRE, which one should I spend more time on? I wouldn't ask it if I could study both at my hometown, but unfortunately, I can only choose one of them. Yeah, so this is kind of like coming back to, I think I covered this a little bit during my presentation. Basically, ask yourself where you are in your English. If you say, probably I can just do preparation on IELTS for about a month because my English is already good. I just need to kind of like familiar myself with the kind of test in IELTS or TOEFL or what have you, to get myself going so that by the time you're taking the real test, you're kind of like familiar with it. Then I would say just kind of like do IELTS real quick and then be done with it, and then so that you have more time in the GRE. But if let's say, oh man, like I'm not like I don't think I have like really good English skill, then it's almost useless for us to actually focus on GRE, because then in the GRE they have the GRE verbal. So if we already have a very kind of low English proficiency, then it's going to be very hard to move on, especially if the university asks for GRE, right? So I would say kind of like focus on the English first in this case. So, and be done with it if you can. Good question. Acunia, Labiba, thanks for the question. One of my programs that I want to attend is saying that the GRE or GMAT test is not required. Woohoo! That's exactly what we want to hear, guys. And I have a feeling that with the current situation, hopefully the universities are still not requiring the GRE or GMAT. And so this is like a good time for you guys to actually apply like right now, like this particular admission cycle, so that you can only just focus on, at least we can kind of like forget about GRE and GMAT and just focus on something else like the resume and of course essay and letter of recommendation and what have you. Okay. The GRE or GMAT test is not required. However, if you feel that submitting your scores, I like this. However, if you feel that submitting your scores will strengthen your application, you are welcome to submit them. How do you suggest me towards that requirement? Should I still submit the GRE GMAT or not? Kind of thinking about it. Good question, Acunia. The way I look at it, like really, how comfortable are you in getting good scores in the GRE or GMAT, especially in the quant section? But then again, I can't really say that. I think it really depends on what programs that you want to do. So if you want to do MBA, for example, then we definitely want to show off the quant section and then ask yourself, how comfortable are you with your math? And then how comfortable are you with your English as well? So we're talking about if you can kind of get a score of 650 and above, or 165 in the quant, or 155 in the verbal. If you have a feeling that you can achieve that, I would say, yeah. And then you have, extra money laying around, and then you have extra time to do quick preparation. I don't see why not. But I'm the type of person that if they say, I read it as is. I know there are some people, I don't know, maybe with Santika, and is this not like wrong or whatever, but there are some people who thinks that, okay, so they're not requiring the GRE or GMAT, but then they really pay attention to what comes next. But if they say, so for example, like optional, right? Like, there are some people who think optional essay, if they ask for optional essay, just do it. For me, optional is optional. It doesn't really mean anything. I will take a look at the timeline, or if I have the time, or if I feel like doing it, then yes, I would do these whatever optional. But if it's kind of like give me extra stress, extra time, and they say it's optional, why would I want to do that? It's optional. They're not. It doesn't mean that you don't submit the optional essay or the optional GRE or GMAT. It's going to lower the chance. It's optional. They say it for a reason. Okay. So hopefully that answered. If you kind of like need more assurance, let's talk in Zoom one-on-one. Okay. PNY, I want to ask the role of cover letter. I have heard my consul told me that I should write a cover letter, but I could not find it on the university. Exactly. Cover letter is not common. Maybe outside the US it is. But PNY, I don't know if you want to study master's or PhD here. But yeah, cover letter is not that common, unless probably the university asks for it, but I don't really see that being the case. Acunia, again, how long we normally have to wait for the... Oh, not good question. Okay, hold on. Hi, Ka, may I have your email for sending my... Okay, that's another question. I think that's, a question that we can answer. But I want to close this whole session tonight by answering Acunia's question, which is, thanks for asking that good question, which I actually had that from my advisees, and I think I forgot to kind of like touch upon this question. How long we normally have to wait for the professor to reply our email? It is actually really important, guys, because I think, at least in Indonesia, I don't know about other countries, it's not common for us to do a follow-up. I feel like, the way I look at it, I don't know, I may be wrong. But the way I look at it, a lot of people, a lot of my advisees, when they are done sending an email to professor and then they wait for like 2 weeks or even like 3 weeks, they didn't do anything about it. And then they come like a month later, come to EdAmerica or share the story with me, like, hey, Fina, yeah, I did try email like a month ago, but I didn't, receive any reply. My first question is always, did you follow up? So the keyword here is following up, right? And then almost all my advisors are saying, no, I didn't follow up. And that's like what we don't want to do. We have to follow up because we are talking about super busy people, right? So give it about a month give it about a week or a week and a half. If you still have not heard from them, then it's okay to follow up. But then at the same time, also think about on when did you email the professor. So for example, if you're emailing them in the middle of a semester, so we're talking about late January until like, March, for example, you probably won't hear from them, or maybe it's very easy for them to actually get back to you. So that's why it's always good if you can email them during like a break, for example, although, yeah, probably they are going to reply to you like a bit later. But like sometimes like in summer time, like now, actually should be a good idea, because sometimes, although some of them may take like some times off, they are still kind of like able to kind of like, like reply to emails. But like in July, August, it's also nice. Well, technically you can email them like all year round. But yeah, give them like about a week or a week and a half, do some follow up. If there is no reply, then we can kind of like assume that, yeah, the professor is just not going to write you back, and you don't have to feel like bad or don't take it personally. But yeah, follow up is actually really important. Okay, 8:34. I think we can end this session here. Thank you for very great questions, guys. But overall, I want to thank everyone to just basically just be here with us and joining the session. And I just really really hope that there are a lot for you to take with you tonight. Okay. Thank you so much, Santika, for helping me during the presentation with the questions. Please check out our upcoming events. We're going to have one tomorrow, and then we're still cooking some events in July. So please pay attention to that as well, and please consider seeing one of us in the one-on-one advising session. We are always open every day. Obviously, not now because Santika and I are running the events, but we are other than when there are no events, we are always here. So please consider using our service. And before I forgot, all of our services are free of charge. So we want more advisees to see us. Okay. Thank you guys so much. And again, thank you, America. Thank you, everyone who is watching this session. I look forward in having you again next time. Have a good evening. And I'm going to give you back to our amazing e-guide. Have a good night, guys.
Thank you so much to Kak Santika and Kak Vina. It was really insightful session. Earlier in this event, we asked our audience, the question was, true or false, Harvard University is the oldest university in the US? And the correct answer is true. Harvard University was established in 1636, making it the oldest university in the US. Shout out to Megan Tara Fauzal Holib from Facebook for answering correctly. Thank you so much to everyone who has participated to our trivia. Don't forget to tune in next time and catch a chance to get a live shout out from us. Also, I mentioned about our giveaway, the iPad Pro. If you're wondering how to get the iPad Pro, it's very easy. You can design a mask that describes the diversity of the US and Indonesia and upload it through your social media, tag us, and make sure your account is public so we can see your amazing design. For further information, you can visit the link at atam.tv/mask to unmask. Now, you may be wondering, how can I develop an awesome idea for a place like this? Easy. You can visit our link at www.america.org.id, select Create a Program, and collaborate with us. All the event proposals will be reviewed and your event might be featured here soon. You can also subscribe to our newsletter to get our weekly event updates. That wraps this episode. It's been fun. Unfortunately, we have to say goodbye. You can follow our social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at AT America to get fun content and so much more. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks again for joining us. My name is Aninda and have a good day. Thank you.